Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping in and getting ready to explore the pretty comprehensive world of website analysis and open source intelligence, or OSINT. Our mission here is to take a whole stack of source material. We're talking research papers, documentation, technical notes, all centered around a single, really powerful web check tool.
Right.
And we're going to distill all of that so you can see what's really going on beneath the digital surface of, well, any website.
And that's the core objective, isn't it? I mean, looking at the sources, it's pretty clear this isn't just some simple link checker.
No, not at all.
Or a basic speed test. We're really looking at a holistic security and operational audit. The real aim is to uncover everything.
Everything.
Potential attack vectors, the server architecture underneath, specific security configurations, and, the entire technology stack a site is using. So for the user, whether you're a security pro or just a site owner, the goal is knowledge. Knowledge that helps you optimize and secure things.
The scope is just massive. The sources describe a dashboard with, well over 20 distinct checks?
At least.
So to keep this manageable and, really impactful for you, we've structured this deep dive into 3 clear layers. We're going to start with the foundation, the infrastructure. Then we'll move up to the security posture, and finally we'll hit the operational footprint of the site.
Sounds good.
So let's start at the very, very beginning, the foundation of the web, right? The network layer.
Yeah.
When you analyze a website, you don't start with the graphics. You start by finding out where the server actually lives.
Precisely. And that crucial first step is finding the IP address. We're talking about querying the domain name system for the domain's A record.
The A record.
Right. And it sounds so basic, but finding that IP address, that's the master key. It lets the tool move from, the abstract domain name to a concrete network address.
And that unlocks everything else.
It enables that deep probing of the server itself. You can immediately start to map the network, identify the hosting provider, and this is a big one for OSINT Discover if other, maybe totally unrelated domains are on that same server.
And once we have that IP, we immediately get the server location check. And this isn't just the country, right? We're getting specific latitude and longitude time zone.
Yeah, even the country flag. It's all based on looking up that IP in a location database. And this location data, it's so often overlooked, but it has huge implications.
Like what, for example?
Well, for a site owner, knowing your server is physically in, say, jurisdiction X, that immediately changes your legal risk. You have to think about data sovereignty, GDPR, CCPA.
Right. Compliance.
Exactly. And it also helps with content delivery strategy. For a researcher, it just provides key context for threat modeling based on, geographical risk factors.
Okay, so let's dig deeper into the DNS itself. The tool checks for A and C and AME records, sure, but where's the subtle intelligence goldmine? I'm thinking about the mail exchange, the MX records, and the text records.
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating about those is what they reveal about an organization's internal choices. The MX records, They tell you exactly who handles their email.
So are they using Google, Microsoft 365, or running their own show?
Precisely. And that information immediately helps you profile the company's dependency on certain tech ecosystems.
And the TXT records, they're designed for boring admin tasks, but they always seem to be a source of accidental leaks.
They absolutely are. So TXT records are used for things like domain verification and security policies. We'll get to SPF and DMARC later. But because they're just free-form text, admins sometimes leave descriptive or old notes in there.
Oh,
Maybe a reference to a staging server or an internal system name. It's a plain text file for machines, so it rarely gets the same scrutiny a web page does. And that leads to, inadvertent information disclosure.
Speaking of scrutiny, let's talk about hardening DNS itself. DNS security extensions, or DNS SSC. Traditional DNS is, it's inherently trusting. It doesn't verify responses.
Yeah. And that lack of verification is its Achilles heel. It makes unhardened DNS so vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks, DNS spoofing, cache poisoning.
Redirecting users to malicious sites without them even knowing.
Exactly. DNSACC solves this. It adds digital signatures to the DNS records using public key cryptography.
So implementing DNS-SCC sounds like a huge technical undertaking. What does its presence or its absence tell an investigator?
It signals maturity. The presence of DNS-SEC is a clear indicator that a site is seriously committed to cybersecurity. It requires careful maintenance, key rotation, a level of rigor that, frankly, basic sites just don't bother with.
So it's a sign they're taking things seriously.
A site using DNS-SEC is actively ensuring the integrity of its address records. That immediately raises its defense profile in your analysis.
That sets us up perfectly for connectivity and routing. We've got Traceroute, the diagnostic tool that shows the whole path a data packet takes, logging every single hop.
And the OSINT value of a traceroute goes way beyond just measuring latency. If you actually watch the path, you can identify these high-value infrastructure points.
Like what?
Specific internet exchange points, backbone switches, places where traffic converges. And a sudden change in that route, or too many hops, can signal bottlenecks, or even, in some contexts, censorship efforts. Plus, it just hands you more IP addresses to investigate along the way.
And those paths eventually lead to the server's open doors.
Yeah.
The open port.
Exactly. Open ports map directly to services running on that server. Port 80 for HTTP, 443 for HTTPS, maybe an SSH port.
Or something unexpected.
Right. And knowing those exposed services is essential because it drastically narrows down the potential attack surface. We know exactly what to test because the server is openly advertising what it's running.
Okay, so that's the infrastructure mapped out. We've pinned the server down. But location is only half the story. Now we have to ask, how well is it defended? So let's pivot to that second layer, the security posture, starting with the SSL/TLS chain.
SSL certificates, the things that enable HTTPS, are so much more than just that little green lock icon. Beyond just encrypting the communication, the certificate itself gives you critical OSINT data. We can pull the issuing authority, the exact validity period, organization details. And sometimes, through alternate names on the cert, you can discover associated subdomains or other services tied to the same owner.
This moves us into enforcing that security. The sources spent a lot of time on HTTP Strict Transport Security, HSTS.
HSTS is a really powerful, almost coercive, defensive mechanism. It forces all traffic to use HTTPS, defending against protocol downgrade attacks and cookie hijacking.
So it does three big things, right?
Right. First, it automatically redirects any HTTP request to HTTPS, even if you type it in wrong. Second, it fixes any insecure links on an otherwise secure page. And critically, it stops the user from clicking through that "this certificate is invalid" warning.
It's security by force.
It prevents human error from becoming a vulnerability.
HSTS sounds great, but doesn't its preload list mechanism where browsers basically hard code the requirement, doesn't that create a centralization risk? You're relying on browser vendors to police this?
That's a very sharp point, and yeah, the sources do imply there's a trade-off. The preload list gives you maximum protection immediately, which is crucial, but it does introduce a dependency on, say, Google, who maintains the list.
Right.
If a site owner makes a mistake and needs to downgrade or change things fast, the preload list makes that process incredibly slow until the browsers all update. It's that classic tension between maximum security and operational agility.
We see similar defenses in the HTTP security headers. The Content Security Policy, or CSP, seems like a major one.
CSP is fundamental for modern web defense. It's designed to stop client-side attacks like cross-site scripting by basically telling the browser which resources, scripts, images, styles are allowed to load.
So looking at the CSP tells you what the organization is worried about.
Exactly. A poorly configured CSP is almost an open invitation for XSS attacks.
And we also look for X-frame options and X-content type options.
Yeah, those are key for very specific, very common attacks. X-frame options prevent clickjacking. That's where an attacker loads your site in an invisible frame to trick people. And X-content type options stops MAME type confusion attacks, preventing a browser from, say, running an uploaded file as a script when it was supposed to be just an image. Looking at these headers tells you the security team's immediate priority list.
Okay, moving beyond internal settings, we look for external defenses, like a web application firewall, a WAF.
WAFs are the front line. They're filtering HTTP traffic, looking for things like SQL injection, and identifying which WAF a site is using is a huge OSINT win.
Why is that?
Not only does it confirm a protection layer, but researchers can then check vulnerability databases for flaws specific to that WAF product itself. You get to understand the exact defensive tech you're up against.
And to wrap up the immediate threat picture, the tool checks against malware and phishing blacklists, like Urello House and PhishTank.
Yeah, that's a reputation check. It tells you the current threat level. If a site is flagged, it means it's either been compromised or is being actively used for malicious stuff, which has immediate consequences.
Now this brings us to something that isn't really a technical defense, but more. Organizational hygiene, the security.txt file. It's a proposed standard, RFC 91106. Why is this plain text file so critical?
It creates a standardized way to communicate. It needs to have a contact point, usually an email, and can have other things like policy links or PGP keys.
And without it,
Without it, a researcher who finds a critical vulnerability has an ethical problem. How do they report it safely? They often end up using public or insecure channels, which exposes the vulnerability before it can be fixed. Having a security.txt file just shows a culture of responsible interaction.
that sets the stage perfectly for our final layer: content, metrics, and the operational footprint, the visible part of the site. We'll start with the visibility controls, specifically the crawl rules in robots.txt.
Right, the robots.txt file. It uses the robots exclusion protocol to tell search engines what to avoid indexing. But here's the OSINT paradox.
It's a public map of things you want to hide.
Exactly. It can inadvertently disclose the very directories and files the owner intended to keep private. They're relying on search engines to be polite. If a directory is important enough to exclude, it's often important enough to investigate.
We contrast that with the site's intended structure, the sitemap, or what the tool calls listed pages.
Sitemaps give us that clear blueprint of the public content. But we get even more insight by looking at the linked pages, both internal and external.
How so?
Internal link analysis can reveal forgotten or vulnerable pages not in the main navigation. And external links are vital for assessing partnerships, dependencies, and even reputation risks if you're unknowingly linking out to a compromised domain.
Okay, let's shift to the client side. We analyze cookies to see how a site tracks user session management, analytics, ad trackers. And then we identify the entire tech stack.
Identifying the tech stack is done by fetching the site and running its content, headers, everything, through a huge database of fingerprints from projects like Wapalizer.
And that's high-value information.
Oh, absolutely. For competitive analysis, it tells you exactly what CMS or frameworks a competitor is using. For security, knowing a site is running an outdated version of, say, a WordPress plugin immediately points to known vulnerabilities.
And we also look deeper into the operational headers, which aren't strictly for security, but reveal architectural choices.
Exactly. These headers often give away the specific server type. Is it Apache, Nginx, something else? They reveal caching directives, other technologies. It provides that final architectural fingerprint.
To close out this layer, we have to talk about that quartet of email configuration checks. Email security is so important, so DMARS, DKIM, SPF, and BIMI deserve a close look.
These four work together to fight phishing and brand spoofing. A misconfiguration in any one of them is a huge attack vector. So SPF authorizes which IPs can send email for your domain.
Get it wrong and anyone can pretend to be you.
Right. And DKIM adds a digital signature to the header, ensuring the message wasn't altered in transit.
And then come the enforcement mechanisms.
Exactly. DMARS builds on SPF and DKIM and tells the receiving server what to do if those checks fail, reject, quarantine, whatever, and it sends reports back to you about who's trying to spoof your domain, which is great OSINT on its own.
And the last one, BIMI.
BIMI is the new visual standard. It ties your verified logo directly to your DR mark record, giving people in their inbox that visual assurance that the email is legit. Analyzing this whole setup tells you how seriously an organization takes email integrity.
Okay, we've covered infrastructure, security, and operations. Let's zoom out and look at the final piece: quality, context, and history. The tool uses Lighthouse for quality metrics.
Lighthouse is basically a holistic health check. It gives you a score based on a checklist of about 100 metrics. It's looking at performance, accessibility, SEO health, best practices.
So it gives a site owner a direct to-do list for optimization.
And it gives a researcher a gauge of the site's overall technical diligence.
We also get a sense of scale with the global ranking.
Yeah, that ranking comes from the Tranco project, which aggregates data from a bunch of providers. And this is critical context. If a site is in the top 10,000, you know it's facing constant, sophisticated threats. A site outside the top 10 million, not so much. It just informs the risk analysis.
And for real historical context, the tool can pull the archive history from the Wayback Machine.
Which is incredibly valuable. You can see how a site has evolved, how pages have changed, and often find content that was strategically removed.
Old policy documents, maybe?
Old policies, prior version notes, expired press releases. That removed content can be the key to understanding a current vulnerability or a shift in strategy.
And finally, there's this broader analysis: the estimation of the carbon footprint.
That's a fascinating, very modern metric. It estimates the site's impact based on data transfer and server energy use. It's not a direct security input, but for researchers or activists interested in corporate sustainability, it's a vital data point.
Just a quick note before we wrap up. We saw that to get the most comprehensive results, the sources rely on optional API keys for services like Shodan or Google Cloud, which just reinforces the depth available if you choose to link your tool stack. So we've synthesized a mountain of information here. You now have the ability to analyze a website through all these integrated lenses, from its geographical roots via IP and traceroute to its cybersecurity maturity shown by HSTS and DNSSEC, all the way to its ethical footprint with carbon calculations.
Yeah, if we connect this all to the bigger picture, the power here is its ability to synthesize these diverse streams of information into one cohesive narrative. It moves you past just seeing a website as a static page and into understanding its dynamic mechanics, its security weak spots, and its operational commitments.
It's the difference between just seeing a digital asset and truly understanding it. So if we look back at our analysis, some of those useful information often came from those plain text files, like security.txt and robots.txt dash files meant for bots and researchers. If our biggest vulnerabilities sometimes lie in the simplest, most overlooked files that just rely on human diligence to manage correctly, what does that imply about our focus on complex encryption and advanced threat detection? Is the human element, and just good organizational hygiene, still the single most critical factor in system security?